Clara Evans used to believe in safety. The quiet kind of life, warm bedsheets, morning coffee in a sunny kitchen, the steady hum of a family that made sense. That was before her world collapsed over a signature she hadn't thought twice about. She remembered the pen. Slim, silver, expensive. Matt had handed it to her with that same charming smile he always used when he was hiding something. "Just a few forms, honey. It'll make everything easier," he said, brushing her hair behind her ear like he used to when he still loved her. But it hadn't made anything easier. In a matter of days, Clara Evans, once a wife with a mortgage and a minivan, became a single mother with 2 daughters, no home, no savings, and one tattered suitcase that held what was left of her life. Now, she sat on a cold metal bench outside the diner where she scraped by on tips and weary feet. Next to her, Mia and Ella huddled under their shared blanket, giggling over half a sandwich she had stretched between them. One sandwich, 2 smiles. Clara clung to small victories. Then came the car. Sleek, black, the kind that hummed quietly and smelled like leather and money. Clara stiffened, her heart tightening with the instinctive dread of a woman who'd lost too much. But the man who stepped out wasn't danger. He was memory. "Clara." His voice cracked a little. "Clara Evans?" She blinked, looked up, and there he was, Andrew Carter. Back in high school, he was the shy kid with kind eyes and a notebook full of comic sketches. Now he stood tall and put together, wrapped in a tailored coat, concern written all over his face. "Andrew." Clara's voice barely made it out of her throat. He looked at her daughters, then back at her. Are you okay?" The question hit like a wave. Was she okay? She wanted to laugh, but the sound would have broken something inside her. "I'm surviving," she managed. "This is Mia and Ella." Andrew crouched down and smiled gently at the girls. "Hi, I'm an old friend of your mom's." They looked up with sleepy curiosity, nodding politely. Clara pulled the blanket tighter around them. Andrew stood again. "Clara, this isn't right. You can't be out here like this. What happened?" Her chest tightened. She hated pity. But something in his voice wasn't pity. It was heartbreak. Real, familiar heartbreak. "It's a long story," she said, glancing away. "And not one I'm proud of." "Let me help," Andrew said, quietly, firmly. "You and the girls. You can stay with me, just for the night. Please." Clara froze. Pride, shame, exhaustion, they all tangled in her chest like barbed wire. But then she looked at Mia's chapped lips and Ella's tiny hands turning purple from the cold. And she knew what she had to do. "Just temporarily," she said. Andrew smiled. Of course. His house smelled like cinnamon and cedar. There were warm blankets, clean pajamas, and soup that didn't come from a can. Clara watched from the hallway as her daughters curled into real beds for the first time in months, their faces soft with sleep. She didn't cry. She was past crying. But something in her loosened. Andrew never pressed. He didn't ask for details. He just let her be. He made tea in the mornings, left little notes on the counter, and kept his voice gentle around the girls. Days turned into a week. Clara helped around the house, kept her distance, but each time Andrew smiled at Mia's jokes or tucked a blanket around Ella, something inside her thawed. One evening, as the girls played with a puzzle, Andrew sat beside Clara on the couch. "I've been thinking," he said. "Do you still dream about doing interior design? I remember your art projects in school. You used to light up when you talked about colors and spaces." Clara laughed softly. "That feels like a different life." "Maybe it doesn't have to be," Andrew replied. "There are online courses. I could help you get started." She stared at him. "Why would you do that?" "Because I believe in you," he said simply. "And because I know what it's like to lose your way." That night, Clara lay awake long after the lights went out. She thought about paint swatches and floor plans. She thought about the way her heart used to beat faster when she walked into a beautiful room. She hadn't felt that in years. The next morning, she agreed to try. Her fingers shook the first time she opened the course site. She hadn't studied anything in a decade. But slowly, week by week, she found her rhythm again. She stayed up late, sketching designs at the kitchen table while Andrew graded papers beside her. He never made a show of helping, but he was always there, watching the girls when she needed a quiet hour, praising her assignments with the quiet pride of someone who cared deeply and didn't need to say it out loud. For the first time in a long while, Clara started to feel capable. But just as her life began to bloom again, the ghost she thought she'd buried came knocking. Matt Harper, still smug, still heartless, still pretending her destruction had nothing to do with him. I owe you nothing, he told her when she begged him to help with their daughters. This is your mess now. Deal with it. She left the meeting with her shoulders stiff and her stomach knotted, but she wasn't shattered. Not this time. Andrew was waiting when she came home. One look, and he knew. He's still the same, Clara said quietly. Still hollow. You don't need him, Andrew said, his voice calm but firm. You never did. Something in those words unlocked a truth she had hidden from herself for years. She didn't need Matt. She never needed saving. Just someone who reminded her of her strength. That weekend, as Clara folded laundry in the living room, Mia and Ella walked in with serious faces and a drawing in Ella's hands. Mom, Mia began. We've been talking. Clara smiled. That sounds dangerous. Ella held up the drawing, a family of 4, holding hands under a rainbow. We think Uncle Andrew could be our dad. Clara blinked. What? He's already everything a dad should be, Mia said simply. He's kind. He's there. He listens. Clara swallowed hard. He is, isn't he? Ella nodded. We don't need the other one. We choose Andrew. Clara knelt and pulled them both into her arms, her heart breaking and healing at the same time. Somehow, amidst all the loss, they had found something better. A beginning. Clara never expected her life to be rearranged by kindness. She used to think survival was a solo act, one foot in front of the other, one problem at a time. Depending on someone felt dangerous, like standing too close to the edge. But then came Andrew, with quiet patience and a steady hand, and little by little, her walls began to crack. It wasn't a grand gesture that broke through. It was the way he checked if she'd eaten, how he always asked the girls how their day was, and actually listened. He didn't offer promises, he offered presence. Still, trust didn't come easy. She was sitting on the porch one evening, watching the sun dip behind the trees, when Andrew joined her with 2 mugs of tea. You haven't been sleeping, he said, handing her a mug. She took it without looking at him. I have a lot on my mind. You think I'll leave, don't you? The words landed like a stone in her chest. She didn't answer right away. Andrew leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Clara, I know he broke your trust. I can't change what he did, but I'm not him. She stared into the steam rising from her cup. You don't know what it's like to lose everything, to be so ashamed that you can't even look in the mirror. I know more than you think, Andrew said quietly. But I do know this. You don't have to prove anything to me, or to anyone. She looked at him, her eyes tired but open. I'm scared that if I let this happen, if I let you in too deep, it'll all fall apart again. He didn't reach for her hand. He didn't move closer. He just said, then we'll take it one step at a time. And if you fall, I'll be there. The weeks that followed were full of cautious hope. Clara dove deeper into her interior design studies. With every project she completed, her confidence grew. She'd forgotten how satisfying it felt to build something. An idea, a plan, a room that made people feel something. Andrew watched her work with quiet pride. He never made her feel like she owed him anything. That mattered more than he knew. And the girls? They were thriving. Mia's drawings had grown brighter, bolder. Ella had stopped asking if they were moving again. Their laughter filled the house like music, and Clara began to realize something unthinkable a year ago. This house was starting to feel like home. One rainy afternoon, Clara was curled up on the couch, sketching out ideas for a friend's guest room, when Andrew came in holding a small envelope. What's that? She asked. He smiled. An invitation. She raised an eyebrow. To what? A dinner. With my parents. Clara froze. Your parents? Andrew nodded. They're in town for the weekend. They've been asking about you. Clara's throat tightened. I'm not sure that's a good idea. Andrew sat beside her. You don't have to impress them. Just be you. They'll love you. She wanted to believe him. But the idea of being judged, again, twisted her stomach into knots. The dinner was in a quiet Italian restaurant. Intimate. Soft lighting. Linen napkins she wasn't sure how to fold. Andrew's mother wore pearls. His father, a soft-spoken man with kind eyes, asked thoughtful questions. Clara tried to smile, to breathe. And then Mia told a story about Andrew burning pancakes, and Ella giggled so hard she snorted, and everyone laughed. Even Clara. For a moment, she forgot to be afraid. After dessert, Andrew's mother leaned over and touched Clara's hand. You've raised 2 lovely girls. That speaks volumes. Clara smiled, her heart full. Thank you. Later that night, as they drove home, Andrew reached for her hand and held it gently in the space between them. You were amazing, he said softly. She looked at him, then down at their hands. This is real, isn't it? It is, he said, and I'm not going anywhere. Clara's first real client came through a friend of Andrew's, a small coffee shop in need of a refresh. She poured herself into the work, sketching ideas late into the night, researching textures, creating mood boards on their dining table. When the project was done, the owners cried happy tears during the reveal. You've made it feel like home, they said. Clara walked out of that cafe glowing. Andrew threw her a celebration dinner at the house, just a few close friends, some wine, and Mia's homemade cupcakes. There was music and laughter, and Clara felt something she hadn't felt in years. Pride. Real, earned pride. As the evening faded and guests began to leave, Andrew pulled her aside in the kitchen. He looked nervous, almost shy. What is it? She asked. He pulled a small box from his pocket. Clara's breath caught. I know this isn't where you thought life would take you, he said. And I know it hasn't been easy. But you've rebuilt everything from the ground up, with strength and grace and a lot of coffee. She laughed through tears. I don't want to just be the guy who helped you when things were hard. I want to be the man who stands beside you every day after. Will you marry me, Clara? She didn't answer right away. Her hands trembled. Then she nodded. Yes. Just like that. The future they both feared suddenly felt possible. Clara never dreamed her second wedding would feel like her first real one. There were no grand halls, no glittering chandeliers, no orchestra swelling behind 100 guests. Just a garden strung with lights, a rented arch wrapped in soft flowers, and two little girls who could hardly contain their excitement in satin dresses with pockets. She stood before the mirror in a simple gown she'd picked with Ella on her lap, and Mia, holding her hand. Her hair was pinned with care. No veil, just a quiet confidence in her eyes that hadn't been there the first time she said, I do. Andrew waited outside, nervously smoothing the collar of his suit while Mia peeked through the curtain and whispered, He looks really happy, Mom. Clara smiled at her daughter in the reflection. So am I. It wasn't just a marriage. It was a turning point, where survival gave way to living. And when Andrew slipped the ring onto her finger, there was no hesitation, no buried fear. Only a profound sense of arrival. She wasn't just starting over. She was starting right. After the ceremony, friends and neighbors filled the yard with clinking glasses and laughter. The girls danced barefoot on the grass. Andrew's parents shared quiet tears, and Clara found herself at the center of something she had never truly known before, belonging. Later that night, long after the last candle flickered out, Clara stood on the porch with her arms around Andrew's waist, their foreheads touching. This doesn't feel real, she whispered. It's real, he murmured. And it's just the beginning. Their new home wasn't fancy, but it was theirs. Andrew had found the modest house on a quiet street surrounded by trees. It had a little yard, enough space for the girls, and more than enough sunlight for Clara to turn the spare bedroom into a proper studio. They decorated every inch together. Mia picked colors for her room based on flower names. Ella insisted on glow-in-the-dark stars on her ceiling, and Clara chose earthy tones and soft fabrics for the living room. Even the front steps bore their story. Faded chalk drawings from afternoon giggles, muddy sneakers, a small potted herb garden Andrew insisted would totally survive this time. But the walls weren't just painted. They held something deeper now. A piece Clara had spent years chasing and finally caught. Then came a moment she didn't expect, one that broke her in the best way. She was folding laundry in the living room when Mia walked in holding a piece of paper. A drawing, again, this time a family picnic under a bright sun. I made this at school, Mia said, placing it carefully in Clara's lap. Clara smiled. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Mia leaned against her. I showed it to my teacher. She asked who that was. She pointed at Andrew's figure, and I told her, that's my dad. Clara's hands stopped mid-fold. Her throat tightened. She asked if I meant stepdad, Mia continued. I said no, my real dad, the one who's there. The weight of those words landed slowly, like soft rain. Clara reached out and pulled Mia into a hug, her eyes wet. He's so proud of you, Mia, she whispered. Mia nodded. I know. He tells me all the time. The next day, Ella came running into the kitchen with scraped knees and tears on her face. Clara rushed to her. But before she could kneel, Andrew was already there, lifting Ella into his arms, whispering calmly, gently, checking her knee like a seasoned medic. "It's okay," he said. "Let's get you cleaned up." Ella's tiny fingers clutched his shirt, her sobs softening. As he carried her to the bathroom, Clara watched them disappear down the hall. She didn't follow. She stood there, still as stone, overcome by something warm and heavy, a realization. He wasn't replacing anyone. He was becoming everything. Life was not perfect. There were bills, tantrums, missed appointments, spilled milk, and sleepless nights. But they faced it all together. Clara's design business started to grow. She took on more clients, built a portfolio, and even began mentoring other single moms trying to find their footing. Her name started appearing on local blogs. Clara Evans, turning broken spaces into beautiful ones. Each project she took on felt like a small rebellion against the woman she used to be, the one who believed she'd never rise again. And Andrew? He never stopped showing up. No matter how busy his own business got, he made breakfast with the girls each morning. They had routines now, bedtime stories, weekend pancakes, which he had finally stopped burning, Sunday walks in the park. It was during one of those walks that Clara's past tried to push its way back in. Matt Harper. They ran into him by chance. A grocery store parking lot. Clara was loading bags into the car while Mia and Ella played near the cart return. She saw him before he saw her. Same swagger, newer car, still empty eyes. He froze when he saw her. She didn't. She turned, smiled at her daughters, and called them to her. Andrew came back from returning the cart and placed a protective arm around her shoulders. Matt opened his mouth like he might say something, but no words came. Clara just looked at him. Not with anger. Not with pain. With pity. Then she turned away. Mia asked as they drove off, "Was that someone you used to know?" Clara nodded. Not anymore. That night, she sat beside Andrew on the porch again. The air was crisp, the stars bright. "He didn't even recognize who I am now," she said. Andrew smiled, sipping his tea. "That's because he never really knew you." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing me, even when I didn't." 1 week later, the official adoption papers arrived. Mia and Ella would no longer be Harper girls. They would be Carters. The girls cried when they found out. Happy, disbelieving tears. Ella kept repeating, "I have a real dad now." Mia hugged Andrew so tight, he nearly toppled over. Clara stood back, watching the scene unfold, her hand over her mouth, trying to hold it all in. But she couldn't. She wept. Not from grief, not from fear. From the overwhelming beauty of getting another chance to rewrite everything. But as happiness grew, so did something else. Quiet, subtle, unspoken. Clara began to feel a strange pressure rising inside her, like a whisper that kept asking, what if this isn't meant to last? Because life had taken everything once. What if it tried again? Happiness had its own kind of shadow. For months after the adoption, Clara found herself smiling in the mirror, only to flinch. It was like waiting for an earthquake after years of tremors. Everything felt too good, too steady. She loved this life. She belonged in it. But somewhere inside, a small voice whispered, "Don't relax." Not yet. It crept in during the quiet moments, when the girls were asleep and Andrew was reading by the fire. It whispered during client meetings when she second-guessed her ideas. It sat beside her while she brushed Ella's hair or packed Mia's lunch. What if it all came undone? She didn't tell Andrew at first. He was juggling so much, his business, the house, the girls. He deserved peace. She didn't want to weigh him down with anxieties that made no sense outside her head. But one evening, it spilled out anyway. She'd had a difficult client who rejected her designs, bluntly, carelessly, and it shook something loose. She came home, smiled through dinner, tucked the girls in, and then quietly broke down in the kitchen. Andrew found her leaning against the sink, her hands trembling. "Clara." His voice was soft, alarmed. She shook her head. "I don't know what's wrong with me. Everything's fine. It's good, and still, I feel like it's going to slip through my fingers." He came to her, gently pulling her into his arms. "It's not wrong to be scared," he said. "But you're not that woman anymore, Clara. You don't have to live in survival mode." "I don't know how else to live," she whispered. He stroked her hair. "Then let's relearn it together." Andrew had always been calm, rational, but he wasn't blind to the toll Clara's past had taken. So he made space for her fear, her doubts, her slow healing. They started taking morning walks before the girls woke up. Just 10 minutes, no phones. They talked about nothing and everything. She told him about her panic dreams, the ones where she was back in the motel, trying to feed the girls with empty pockets. He listened, never tried to fix it, just stayed beside her, steady as stone. Clara started journaling again, sketching just for herself. Sometimes she'd wake in the middle of the night with a new idea, and Andrew would find her at the kitchen table, barefoot and focused, scribbling away. "You're building something beautiful," he told her once, watching her sketch a nursery design for a new client. "Not just for others, for yourself." One afternoon, a letter arrived. It was from the city, a design firm she had applied to months ago without telling anyone, not expecting a response. They wanted to interview her. Clara stared at the letter, heart pounding. It was a well-known firm, competitive. She had no degree, just certificates, a growing portfolio, and a lot of heart. Suddenly, she wasn't sure any of it was enough. That night, over dinner, she hesitated. Andrew noticed. "You're quiet." Clara folded her napkin slowly. "I got an interview. For a firm downtown. It's a big one." Mia looked up, excited. "Like famous?" Clara smiled faintly. "Something like that." Andrew set down his fork. "Clara, that's amazing. When's the interview?" "Friday. But I don't know if I should go." Andrew frowned. "Why not? What if they don't take me seriously? I don't have the background, the fancy degree." "You have everything that matters," he said firmly. "Talent, passion, drive. You've built a life and a business from nothing. That's more impressive than any diploma." The girls chimed in with cheers and encouragement. Ella drew her a good luck picture with sparkly markers. And still, the fear lingered. Clara stood outside the office on Friday morning, her heels clicking nervously on the pavement. Her portfolio felt too light in her hands. But she breathed deeply, looked up at the glass building, and reminded herself of everything she'd survived. The interview wasn't easy. The panel was sharp, curious, skeptical, but interested. Clara answered each question with growing confidence. She showed her designs, explained her process, and spoke not just like a designer, but a woman who knew who she was becoming. When it ended, they thanked her. No promises, just polite nods and professional smiles. She walked out into the sun, shoulders straighter than they'd been in years. 2 weeks later, the offer came. Not a full-time position, but a freelance partnership with potential to grow. Flexible hours, access to larger clients, a chance to prove herself on a bigger stage. Clara cried when she read the email. She wasn't just rebuilding anymore. She was expanding. But life doesn't pause for good news. Around that time, Andrew's business began hitting roadblocks. A major client pulled out. A deal he'd counted on fell through. He tried not to let it show, but Clara noticed the tension in his jaw, the way he stared at spreadsheets late into the night. "You're worried," she said one evening as they folded laundry. Andrew sighed. "It'll pass. Just a rough patch." "Let me help," she offered. He smiled, tired. "You already do." But money started to feel tighter. They cut back on dinners out, canceled a trip they had planned with the girls. Clara offered to pick up extra projects, but Andrew shook his head. "We'll be okay. This is just temporary." But Clara recognized the signs. She'd lived through the worst of it. She knew the slope when it started to tilt. The difference now? They weren't alone. They made a plan, budgeted carefully. Clara took on 2 more clients. Andrew focused on restructuring. They communicated, openly, honestly, and most importantly, they reminded each other of one vital truth. This time, they were in it together. One night, as Clara tucked Ella into bed, her daughter asked quietly, "Are we going to lose everything again?" Clara froze. She sat on the edge of the bed, brushing Ella's hair gently. "No, sweetheart," she said softly. "Things are a little hard right now, but we're safe. And we're together. That's what matters." Ella blinked up at her. "You promise?" "I promise." Weeks passed. The tension lifted. Andrew secured a new deal. Clara landed a commercial design gig that pushed her into new territory and earned her glowing reviews. The storm passed, and their home was still standing. But something had changed in Clara. She no longer feared happiness. She had faced down the echo of her past and survived. Not perfectly, but fully. And when she looked at her daughters now, Mia helping Ella with homework, both of them humming along to music in the kitchen, she saw more than healing. She saw wholeness. Then came the email. Matt Harper's name appeared in her inbox like a ghost. No subject line, just one line of text. We need to talk. It's important. Clara stared at the screen. She felt nothing. And yet, she knew this wasn't over. The moment Clara saw Matt's name in her inbox, the old chill returned. Not fear. Not anymore. Just that strange, hollow ache of unfinished business. She stared at the single sentence on the screen for a long time. We need to talk. It's important. She didn't answer right away. She wasn't sure she needed to answer at all. That night, she told Andrew. He was silent for a beat, then asked, "Do you want to talk to him?" Clara exhaled. "I don't know. Maybe I need to hear what he thinks is so important. Maybe I need to make sure he knows he doesn't own any piece of me anymore." Andrew nodded. "Then go. But only if you want to. Not because you feel obligated." So she did. They met in a public park. Neutral ground. Clara arrived early, sat on a bench beneath an aging tree. When Matt finally appeared, he looked exactly the same, and completely different. Well-dressed, tanned, too polished. But there was a weight in his eyes now. Maybe guilt. Maybe just aging. He sat beside her, leaving a deliberate gap. "Clara," he said, like her name still belonged to him. She stayed quiet. He looked at his hands, then at the path ahead. "I heard about your business. And the girls. I just wanted to say congratulations." She narrowed her eyes. "Is that what was so important?" Matt hesitated. "No. Well, I'm being audited. Some of the past, financial stuff is catching up. And they're asking about joint assets. Old signatures." Clara laughed, cold, but honest. "You mean the ones you forged? Or the ones you tricked me into signing?" He winced. "I'm not here to help you," she said flatly. "I have no interest in being dragged back into your mess. Not now. Not ever." "Clara, no. You don't get to call me that like we're still something. You left me in the dirt with 2 babies and no money. And now that the dirt's catching up with you, you want a lifeline?" She stood. Matt didn't follow. "I came here because I thought maybe you had grown up. But I see now, you're still that same scared little boy in a suit. Still taking shortcuts. Still looking for someone else to clean up your mistakes." She didn't wait for a reply. She walked away, and she never looked back. That night, Clara told Andrew everything. He listened without interrupting, holding her hand as she spoke. When she finished, he kissed her forehead. That was closure. Not for him, for you. She nodded. It felt like locking a door. One I forgot I'd left open. Life moved on. The girls were growing up fast. Mia had just turned 10, Ella 8. They were still full of questions, still bursting with dreams. One evening, after dinner, they huddled together on the couch, working on a school project titled, "What Makes a Family?" Mia scribbled in her notebook. "A family is people who show up for each other, even when it's hard." Ella added, "And they make pancakes." Clara laughed, ruffling Ella's hair. "Is that all it takes?" "No," Mia said, serious now. "It also takes love, and safety, and people who don't give up on you." Andrew looked over from the kitchen. "I like this definition." "So do I," Clara said softly. Months passed, and life unfolded like a well-worn book. Pages full of morning routines, late-night cuddles, report cards pinned to the fridge, and birthday candles wished upon with secret hopes. Clara's design business flourished. She hired 2 assistants. Her name became known not just for beautiful rooms, but for resilience. Clients trusted her, not because she had a glossy resume, but because she got it. She understood starting over. And Andrew? He kept showing up. Every day, not as a hero, but as a partner. When he came home with a scraped knee from building a treehouse, the girls laughed until they cried. When he fell asleep mid-bedtime story, Clara took the book from his hands and whispered the last lines. They had built something real, and it held. One quiet morning, Clara stood in her studio, sunlight pouring across her sketches, and realized something simple but profound. She wasn't afraid anymore. Not of failing, not of falling, not of losing everything again. Because she knew now, she could rebuild anything. And she wouldn't be doing it alone. That weekend, they visited the beach. It wasn't a fancy trip, just a day's drive, a cooler of sandwiches, and a blanket under the sky. Mia and Ella ran ahead, chasing seagulls and waves. Clara leaned against Andrew, toes in the sand. "Remember when all we had was one sandwich?" she murmured. He smiled. "Now we've got a whole picnic." She looked at her daughters, laughing, glowing, free, and then at the man beside her. We're more than a family, she said. We're a home. And for the first time in a long, long time, she let herself feel completely, joyfully whole.